Jerusalem, 701 BCE. They said the flies were the first to arrive. Thousands of them, black, frenzied, and humming with unnatural hunger. They poured through the cracks in the walls of Ekron's temple. They descended on the idol, Beelzebub, lord of the high place, until his golden face was crawling with wings and legs, his jeweled eyes lost beneath the writhing filth. The priests choked on incense smoke, the air soured with rot, though no corpse lay nearby. The whispers began that night. The god had spoken. He would not offer healing, he would offer dominion. 1,000 years later, Christ's enemies would call him mad, possessed. They would claim he cast out demons by the power of Beelzebub, the prince of devils. In secret, some among them knew the name well. It was older than Rome, older than Solomon's ring, older than the world's breath, if the scrolls were true. In the quiet libraries of the Vatican, his name still surfaces in exorcism logs, burnt into the air by tongues not human. In psychiatric hospitals, some patients scream of swarms, of voices, of eyes watching from within the walls. He has gone by many names, but always, where pestilence and power intertwine, he waits. Beelzebub. The name Beelzebub originates from a Philistine deity worshipped in the city of Ekron. In the Hebrew Bible, this deity is called Beelzebub, meaning Lord of the Flies, or Lord of Flies, likely a mocking alteration by Israeli writers. According to 2 Kings chapter 1, 2, and 3, King Ahaziah of Israel attempted to consult Beelzebub's oracle after an injury, an act condemned by the prophet Elijah. The Lord of the Flies title may reflect a patron god invoked to drive away pestilent flies. Some scholars suggest the original name might have been Beelzebul, or Lord of the High Abode, later altered to Beelzebub, meaning, again, Lord of the Flies, or dung. In any case, the Old Testament presents Beelzebub as a foreign idol, mentioned only in the Ekron episode, and nowhere else in canonical Jewish scripture. By the time of the Second Temple period, Jewish demonology had begun associating the Ekronite Beelzebub with an evil spirit. The Testament of Solomon portrays Beelzebub as the prince of demons. In this legend, King Solomon, using a magical ring, subdues Beelzebub through his subordinate demon, Orneus. Beelzebub boasts to Solomon that he was formerly the highest-ranking angel in heaven before his fall, and once under Solomon's control, all of the demons came under the king's command. This reflects an early extra-canonical evolution of Beelzebub's character from a local god to a fallen angel of prime rank. In the New Testament, Beelzebub appears as the name for the chief demon, or Satan himself. The Synoptic Gospels record opponents of Jesus accusing him of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub. Jesus, in response, equates Beelzebub with Satan, reasoning that if Satan were casting out his own demons, his kingdom would not stand. By this period, the term Beelzebub clearly had evolved into a recognized epithet, the devil, or a high demon, in Jewish popular belief. Notably, the name does not appear in any other contemporaneous Jewish literature. The Dead Sea Scrolls uses Belial for the devil, for example, indicating it was a known folkloric term rather than a formal theological one. Early Christians continued this understanding. Some church fathers identified Beelzebub as the leader of the demonic hosts defeated by Christ. For instance, the Gospel of Nicodemus has Satan and Beelzebub as separate infernal figures, with Beelzebub pleading against Christ's entry into hell, further cementing his status as a distinct demon in Christian lore, though such details are legendary rather than scriptural. In rabbinic literature, Beelzebub is not a prominent figure, but the rabbis were aware of the Ecronotic idol's infamy. The Babylonian Talmud refers to a pagan figure called Beelzebub in explaining an idol's impurity. Even an idol the size of a fly, like the idol of the Ekronites, which was called Zebub, meaning the fly, is also prohibited, equating the Beelberith worshipped in Judges 8:33 with the fly idol of Ekron. This passage suggests that Jewish sages remembered Beelzebub as an idol, one that was literally fly-sized, kept as a household god. The Talmudic context, however, treats it as a worthless idol rather than an active demon. In Jewish folklore, flies came to symbolize demonic presence or the evil impulse, saying that the evil spirit lies like a fly at the doors of the human heart. Thus, while Beelzebub as a named demon is absent in normative Jewish theology, the concept of a loathsome lord of the flies lived on as a metaphor for impurity and satanic influence. During the medieval period, Christian demonologists expanded upon Beelzebub's legend, elevating him to one of the highest-ranking demons in hell. In famed grimoires, Beelzebub often appears as the devil's chief lieutenant. For example, the Grand Grimoire, from approximately the 17th to the 18th century, lists 3 infernal rulers: Lucifer, Beelzebuth, and Astaroth, with Beelzebuth titled Prince under Emperor Lucifer. Similarly, the 1863 Dictionnaire Infernal describes Beelzebuth as the Prince of Demons, the first in power and crime after Satan, whose name means Lord of the Flies. Over time, Beelzebub's portrayal shifted from a pestilent fly spirit to towering demon of regal status. Nevertheless, traces of his verminous origin persisted in art and description. Some medieval illustrations depict Beelzebub as a giant fly or a grotesque creature with wings. By the Renaissance, Beelzebub was firmly entrenched in Christian lore as a major demon. Demonologists like Peter Bensfield, in 1589, classified Beelzebub among the 7 princes of hell, typically associating him with the sin of gluttony or envy in some variants. Others, such as the 17th century exorcist Sebastian Michaelis, described Beelzebub as a fallen seraphim or an angel of the highest angelic order, who once led angels in heaven and now commands legions of demons as hell's reputed Lord of the Flyers. Thus, across the medieval and early modern era, Beelzebub evolved into a complex figure, at once the repulsive fly demon of folklore and a mighty duke of hell in scholastic demonology. In Christian tradition, Beelzebub's role straddles the line between devil and devil's chief agent. The New Testament usage identifies Beelzebub with Satan, implying that by Jesus' time, Jews used Beelzebul as an epithet for the devil or prince of demons. Later Christian writers ran with the idea, and Beelzebub became known as one of the unholy trinity of hell, alongside Lucifer and Leviathan. Medieval Catholic tradition often viewed him as synonymous with Satan, or at least Satan's foremost lieutenant as well. The Catholic Encyclopedia notes that Beelzebul, or Beelzebub, is used merely as another name for Satan in the Gospels. However, demonological catalogs distinguish him as a separate entity, the Lord of the Flies, who reigns over lesser demons. In these later sources, Beelzebub's attributes include the power of flight and pestilence and immense cunning. Colin D. Clancy's Infernal Dictionary describes Beelzebub as a demon who flies and commands the power of infestation, literally able to send or disperse swarms of demonic flies. Traditionally, Christian demonologists also ascribe to Beelzebub a sinful speciality. By one common classification, he is the demon of gluttony, irresistibly tempting humans to overindulge. Another tradition makes him the demon of envy, perhaps linking to the imagery of buzzing flies coveting nourishment. In either case, Beelzebub's role in Christian thought is as a corrupter and oppressor of mankind, a powerful tempter who, though subordinate to Lucifer, is exceptionally dangerous. Some exorcists have historically feared Beelzebub above others. He was reputed in one legend to be the only demon Lucifer himself feared to confront. In summary, Christian theology, especially the popular and occult variety, casts Beelzebub as Prince of Demons, at times interchangeable with Satan, and at times a distinct demon who leads Satan's armies and furthers his dark will. In Jewish theology, Beelzebub does not occupy an official role the way Satan or Ashmedai or Asmodeus do. The Hebrew Bible remembers Beelzebub only as a foreign idol, and later, Jewish writings treat the name as a bygone term. Nonetheless, Jewish interpreters historically understood Beelzebub as a symbol of pagan corruption and evil. The first-century Jewish historian Josephus rendered Beelzebub as Lord of the Flies, affirming the derogatory sense. Medieval Jewish commentators and the Jewish Encyclopedia theorized that Israelites altered Beelzebul, Lord of the Lofty Abode, or Lord of the High, into Beelzebub to ridicule that god as Lord of Insects or Filth. In essence, for Jewish scholars, Beelzebub exemplified the defilement of adultery, an idol so vile that it was linked to flies and dung. This association influenced Jewish folklore and ethics. Flies came to represent the pervasiveness of the Yetzer Hara, or an evil inclination. A Talmudic homily compares the evil impulse to a fly that dwells in the human heart, reflecting how the fly god metaphor entered moral teaching. Importantly, mainstream Judaism does not personify Beelzebub as a demon in its own right. In the rabbinic worldview, the fallen angel Samael, or the accused angel Satan, filled the role of the devil, and foreign gods were sometimes seen as powerless spirits or non-entities. When the Babylonian Talmud mentions the Ekronite fly idol, it is only to emphasize the zeal of idolaters and the impurity of idolatry. There is no Jewish myth of Beelzebub the demon acting in the world. In later Kabbalistic demonology, Beelzebub might be classified as an impure spirit, but such references are relatively rare. Islamic theology does not recognize Beelzebub as a distinct entity. Neither the Quran or the Hadith literature make mention of a demon or idol by this name. The Quran does refer to an idol called Baal in condemning the idol worship of ancient peoples, but this is a general reference to the Canaanite god Baal, not specifically Beelzebub. In Islamic belief, the chief of devils is Iblis, meaning Satan, and evil spirits are generally known as jinn, none of whom correspond to the Beelzebub of Western lore. Outside of formal theology, Folklore and occult traditions have kept the legend of Beelzebub alive in vivid ways. In many folk beliefs of Christian Europe, Beelzebub became a byword for the devil in pestilent form. Peasants would invoke Beelzebub to curse a troublesome swarm of flies, or to blame an unusually pestilent summer on demonic influence. In German folklore, for example, the devil sometimes appears as a fly, a motif directly tied to the name Lord of the Flies. People took literally the notion that Beelzebub could send flies. One medieval tale claims that an infestation of flies in a church was due to Beelzebub's presence, and only by fumigating with holy incense could the flies, or demons, be driven out. Such stories reinforced Beelzebub's image as the demon of plagues and filth. In witchcraft and folk magic, Beelzebub is frequently featured as a demon to be both feared and used. In the 16th and 17th century witch trials, which accused witches in Europe, allegedly named Beelzebub in their Sabbath rites. In witch hunter manuals, it was written that witches would pay homage to Beelzebub or sign a pact with him as one of the devil's chiefs. For instance, a 17th century French account of a witch's Sabbath lists Beelzebub among the infernal names chanted in the assembly. Folk magicians also sometimes invoked Beelzebub in spells, either to ward off insects and disease, or in darker practices, to curse an enemy with madness, symbolically sending flies to their head. Occult grimoires gave instructions for summoning Beelzebub, though such operations were considered highly dangerous. The Grand Grimoire, as noted, treats Beelzebub as one of the big three demons who must be invoked with utmost caution, using special sigils and sacrifices. The text even specifies a sigil or seal of Beelzebub and requires offerings, sometimes gruesome, like blood or entrails, to curry his favor. In these occult traditions, Beelzebub often retains an insect-like or bestial characterization. Some Renaissance occult diagrams portray him as a gigantic fly or a composite creature. One 18th century grimoire illustration shows Beelzebub as a monstrous being with a fly's head and a humanoid body with huge clawed hands. This reflects the belief that though Beelzebub was high in rank, his true form betrayed his corruption. The once splendid angel was now degraded into a grotesque fly. In other depictions, especially those influenced by literature, Beelzebub appears as a towering demon with regalia, but folklore tended to emphasize the nasty, verminous aspect. Because of his prominence, Beelzebub also entered folk speech and literature as an archetype of the devil. In English lore, rustic devils, or boogeymen, were sometimes nicknamed Beelzebub. Even today, the name survives in common parlance. For example, in the phrase, "Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me," a line from a modern song, he is used synonymously with Satan. Such cultural references keep the folklore image of Beelzebub alive, a demon king with swarms of flies about him, forever associated with decay and the underworld. Throughout history, Beelzebub has certainly left his mark on many things: artistic representations, literature, and ritual practices. His name has been used to invoke fear and drama. All of these threads make Beelzebub a compelling figure, one that spans from biblical times to the present, embodying the enduring human fascination with the personification of evil. Thank you guys so much for watching this newest episode of the Demonology Archives. I decided to bring it back because people were heavily requesting it. I know this particular subject isn't for everyone, but it was for those who wanted it. If you liked it, please give it a like and share it around. Subscribe if you're new here, and consider becoming a channel member or patron. And check out my store for my books and merchandise. I love you guys, and I'll see you soon with another brand new episode. Thanks again for watching, and take care.